So I want to give a big shout out to Marilyn's remarks. You are the settled ministry of this congregation. And I can assure you from every experience I have had as an interim minister, that church is most alive when the people understand that and really grasp that and really believe that you are in a co-ministry with the minister and the staff, and you, the body of the church, are those who endure the most, who've been here 20 years, 15 years, 25 years, and more. So thank you, Marilyn, for that message. In the revised statement of Article 2, it is written, "Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love." Note that phrase, the spiritual discipline of love. And words from the charge to the Article 2 Study Commission is, "The new principles and purposes and values should guide us in the transformation of ourselves, our communities, and our faith. They should ask us to choose love in action as the path forward." And a statement from the proposed Article 2 Purposes and Covenant of the Unitarian Universalist Association. "The purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love." So our religious movement frames our new values in the context of love as a spiritual discipline and as a source of liberation. But what does love mean? There are so many definitions of love. The word love is probably the most misused, misunderstood, most abused, most maligned, and exploited word in the English language. One problem is that the word love is called upon to cover too much territory. The ancient Greeks had 6 words for love. They had the word philia, by which they meant deep, lasting friendship, the camaraderie of two people who enjoyed one another's company, who probably had a great deal in common. Eros was sexual passion and sexuality generally. The Greeks always thought of this, not always as something positive, as we tend to today, but viewed it as a potential fiery and irrational force that could be disruptive, as well as the center of life. There was another word, a third word for love, which was pragma, or long-standing love, it could be translated. And it was not as glamorous as eros, but it might be seen as a mature form of love, involved in making compromises to help a relationship endure over time and showing patience and tolerance in the process. A fourth word that meant love was philosia, or self-love. And that had 2 aspects. One was unhealthy, as we would think of with the word narcissism, self-obsessed and focused on personal fame and fortune. We might know a few political figures who fill that definition. But there was a positive side to it, with the idea being that if someone loved themselves deeply and genuinely and authentically, they could be secure in themselves and be able to love others. The fifth word that represented love was agape, a word that was used in the Christian scriptures quite a bit, and it meant a selfless love for the other with little concern about one's own well-being. And finally, to round out the sixth was ludus, which the Greeks identified with playful love, which referred perhaps to the affection of children for one another, or adults seated together around a table, bantering and laughing over a meal. Now, popular culture is inundated with love and speaks about love a great deal. In fact, one would imagine that if we listened to all the songs about love, we would be always very loving people. It is estimated that there's more than 100 million love songs that have been recorded. Let me share with you some of the titles. Crazy Little Thing Called Love, Can't Help Falling in Love, All You Need Is Love, I Will Always Love You, You Give Love a Bad Name, Can't Buy Me Love, Love is a Battlefield, What's Love Got to Do with It, Tainted Love, Sunshine of Your Love, I Want to Know What Love Is, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, Only Love Can Break Your Heart, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, All Out of Love, I'll Never Fall in Love Again, Why Can't This Be Love? And finally, Love Hurts. It's all very confusing, isn't it? Let me share a story which I think helps clear a path for us toward an understanding of love that is appropriate and right for our religious movement and for our congregations. A young boy, only child of a single mother, was deeply attached to his mother's father, made all the more intense by the absence of his biological or stepfather. But when he was in the first grade, his grandfather passed away after a long illness. And in that same year, he and his mother had to move to another location where they had lived for all of his life. His mother was going through some financial struggles of her own, and life seemed in turmoil. The move led the young boy going to go to a new school in another part of the city far away from where his friends had been made in his former neighborhood and community. The young boy was innately shy and awkward, and he had begun to speak hesitantly with the loss of his grandfather, stuttering at times, repeating his words when he said it, unsure about whether he should say something or not. This attracted some ridicule and taunting, and soon in his new school, he was a bit of an outcast. His awkwardness, of course, was fed by something he carried within himself that he could not communicate to any other person or explain it or explain its power over him, and that was the loss of his grandfather. His mother was very busy working, trying to survive, and provided as best as she could, and saw that her son was kind of sinking towards a great difficulty, but she could not summon the time or energy to do much more than a kind word when she could. But as this was happening, she was encouraged by a friend at work to get a pet for her son. And as soon as she heard the suggestion, she went and did it and brought a dog home, a dog that seemed to want love itself. They named the dog Rusty because of its color. And soon, Rusty and the young boy were the best of friends. And sometimes the mother would walk down the hall, past the small room where her son had his bedroom in their small apartment, and she would hear her son talking to Rusty about all the things that had happened to him that day, and she noticed that Rusty seemed to have the uncanny ability to listen patiently and take in everything the young boy was saying. And the mother began to say to her friends that her son and Rusty had simplified life down to love. That's an interesting phrase. Simplified life down to love. And think about that all the complexity and difficulty and struggles and sometimes chaos and challenges of our life that we have, it diverts our attention here and there, and we wonder what direction our life should have or what is really important. And when we do, perhaps we would be wise to think of this phrase of simplifying life down to love. It means that love is something essential in life, the thing that holds life together, that makes it meaningful. It means that if you get this one thing right, many things fall into place. And that, my friends, is what our religious movement, I think, is trying to communicate to us. Love can mean, as we saw earlier, many things, but I think Rusty and the young boy might give us a good illustration of what love actually means. I think it might help us get closer to understanding love as a spiritual practice. And what the story conveys and reveals is that what love really means is being heard, acknowledged, and respected. And for human beings, that needs to be mutual. Do you think, honestly, in your heart, you are being heard and acknowledged and respected by others? In your heart, do you think that you hear and acknowledge and respect others? Are you aware of relationships where there is a chronic absence of being heard, being acknowledged, and being respected? That's important to know about ourselves, because I think love is not this wildly grandiose and abstract thing. Love is the concrete act, this very specific and very common act of being heard, of being listened to, of being respected, and doing that to others. Secondly, I think love is an active commitment to the well-being of another and ourselves. What could be greater than wanting other human beings and ourselves to be at peace, to feel joy, to feel contentment and wholeness? I think these are the things that make love real. They are what love is, and not an abstraction. Love has no ethnicity, no religion, no country, no age, no restrictions. It cannot be forced upon us, nor can we force it on ourselves. It is simply a choice to be this way, and it is something that can grow through example. And this, my friends, is, I believe, what the Article 2 statement is encouraging us to do, to think carefully, to act wisely, and to practice the spiritual discipline of loving.